Hey, you may have come across something in church history that you didn't like, and we're going to explore it today. In our first, or we're going to get into Trunk Treasures. What if Joseph Smith were a murderer? How would that impact your faith? The Big Ear Bulletin. This is the breaking news. Daily Wire orders a pint of Catholicism. The garments have changed. Endowment has changed, according to the Salt Lake Tribune. We'll get into that. Is the temple even recognizable now? But first, through Elephant's Eyes, D&G versus Orthodoxy. We have special guest from Doctrine and Governance, Luke Hansen. How's it going? Can you hear me?
For me, I can hear you.
Okay,
can
there we
you
go.
hear me?
Yes. How's it going?
Okay, it's going good.
Yes.
First time on, I think, for me.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, hopefully not the last. Let's just jump straight into this first experience, and I'm going to hit this video. I see many of you jumping on the chat, so hello, thank you for being here. But Luke, you went on a show and talked to an Eastern Orthodox church member. So that's like a specific kind of brand of Catholicism, right?
Yes, separate from Catholicism because they reject the Pope.
Okay.
But very
but
much
similar. They apostolic succession and a lot of the kind of traditional Catholic things, but not Protestant. And
correct. Yes.
Yeah. So tell me about your experience and how did you even get in contact with this chap here?
Yeah. This was a guy who was leaving Protestantism actually, and that's the first video that he put out on his channel that went like viral. It got like 88,000 views, I think. Which for a first video, I think you would agree. Wish my channel did that when my first video came out.
Yeah.
Be that as it may.
Yeah.
And so he left Protestantism, and a lot of the reasons he was giving gave me and other people hope that maybe he would consider, exploring at least LDS. And we put that in the comments, and he informed us that no. In his next video, part of his next video was like, and there was a lot of Mormons really excited about me joining the church, but like, nah, not going to do it because Joseph Smith was a fraud or something. And so I reached out to him.
Can I ask you a question real quick?
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested. So when someone moves on from Protestantism to Catholicism, do you think they are increasing enlightened knowledge?
I do. So the Reformation, people think about the Reformation as a reformation of doctrine that was starting to pull the doctrine back to where it was supposed to be, and then the Restoration brought it the rest of the way and added the priesthood authority. That is not the case. Like when you go and actually look at, and I made a chart a couple months ago, kind of comparing things. When you look at the actual doctrines of mainstream Protestantism, because there's a lot of variety there, versus Catholicism, we line up with Catholicism a ton more than we do with Protestantism, like a lot more. What Protestantism did was establish a recognition that maybe the Catholic Church wasn't the true church on the earth, and then
which we agree with. Yes,
exactly.
Yep.
Yes, and then it opened up like religious freedom. So America is a Protestant nation, first place to have religious freedom. So that sentiment that they had of kind of throwing off some of the oppression and control and grip on orthodoxy that the Catholic Church had provided the bed for the restoration, the restored gospel to grow in. But they did not move doctrinally closer to the truth.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So
anyway, thanks for answering that question. Now keep going. So this guy not interested in Latter-day Saints at all. You were kind of
not
communicating with him,
and I wasn't impressed with one of the or two of the arguments that he gave in his comment back to me. And in that same comment, this was in the comments on that video, he said, and I want to do some videos on Mormons actually explain why they're wrong. I was like, well, a lot of people don't do the best job at that. I'm kind of famous for being the one on Word Radio that has done a lot of debunks of these big evangelical Catholic people debunking the Mormons. And so I emailed him and said, hey, like, I don't mind criticism. I think it's better for both sides, though, if it's informed criticism. And so I'm happy to kind of be your Mormon consultant, so to speak, to bounce stuff off of if you're going to do a video debunking us. And after Charlie Kirk died, to his credit, he said, hey, a lot of people are talking about if Mormons are Christians or not, but not very many people are talking to Mormons about if Mormons are Christian. And I apologize for using the term. I'm just using it because he was using it. I'm using his voice, his vernacular with the term here.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we got on here, and I was under the impression we were going to have like an hour and a half convo, mostly centered around the creeds and are Mormons Christians. But instead, he kind of wanted to, like, every single question that he had that he could think of about the church, he kind of threw to me. He was very gracious. He didn't try to argue too much or anything like that. He gave me a lot of ground to speak my mind, and I'm appreciative of that. And the video has done very well, but it was a marathon, man. I was like physically weak after 3 hours of, I'm quoting Aquinas, and I'm quoting this Book of Mormon scripture, and I'm talking about the Catholic doctrine of the normative means of salvation, and I'm flipping over to what Martin Luther, the critique he gave of, and this is like all over the place. Brain workout. But
in the
this
title,
was the part that I particularly liked from this video on the Great Apostasy.
Oh yeah, let's get to that clip here in a second. Yeah, in fact, let's do that right now. So do you want to get to the clip?
Sure. Great Apostasy. I think that sets it up well enough.
Yeah, Great Apostasy, so you can find this full video on the YouTube. I got to ask you this, though, real quick. First off, they said Mormon apologist in the title here with Mormon apologist Luke Hansen. And I know some people are like, hey, be careful if you're being an apologist because, you don't want to mess things up. But I don't know. I think everyone is an apologist, whether they want to or not, because we're kind of called upon to be missionaries, called upon to not be ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. So, we can be strategic on who's doing things publicly, but like, I think people should not be afraid to talk to anyone. So Mormon apologist, I think we all are. I don't think, like, some people, I think in the comments were kind of had like a distasteful attitude towards Mormon apologists. And I'm like, hey, if you're a member of the church, you are an apologist. And so just wanted to point that out. But anyway, here's a question for you. So I watched most of this, and it's like, do you ever find yourself getting frustrated when people have incorrect presumptions about the church? That, like, the one that always starts to bother me about the theology of the church, and I'm kind of just tired of hearing, is this idea that Jesus was like this created being. And you had to mention that in this, but not only did you have to bring it up, you had to like re-bring it up when he started like bashing. I shouldn't say bashing because he's a polite guy, but he started bringing up something unrelated, like later on in the conversation, that was a simple like, but we don't believe Jesus is, like created. We believe he's eternal. It's like you had to bring that up multiple times. I get a little frustrated with it because I'm like, it literally says in the Book of Mormon, right there at the beginning, the eternal God, eternal is like everywhere. Like we don't believe in creation ex nihilo. Do you ever get frustrated? Or is that just me? That's like, seriously, like again?
I don't know if I've gotten frustrated yet, although I guess I could call it frustration. It is the thing that needs to die first, because it's blatantly incorrect, and they're presupposing sort of their classical theistic metaphysics when they're talking about Mormonism, and we just don't have that. And so it's just, not only is it wrong, but it's just not helpful to the conversation. It doesn't prove us right or anything like that. No. Like, it doesn't make the church more true for us to believe he's an eternal being versus not, because our metaphysics is so different anyway. And that's the whole point of that critique that they're trying to make. And so it's like, I don't disagree with the point you're making. It's just that you got it factually wrong, and it just gets repeated over and over and over again. Even top tier people, like William Lane Craig, Frank Turek, like these are not just your ortho bros who haven't ever read anything about Mormonism except for one Mike Winger video they watched. This is like top tier people that are hitting this Jesus was a created being drum, and it does need to die. If I was king for a day, and I could pick one thing that needed to die, it would probably be that. Yes. It's
just, I love our Christian brothers and sisters, and I don't understand. Sometimes it's annoying to me that there's like such care taken to understand and dismantle the atheist arguments and to not strawman. And then they're like, well, you guys get your own planet, and I can make gold plates in my garage. I'm getting off on a little bit of a tangent, but because I love those guys, they're great. But anyway, apostasy. So this was a huge point you guys talked about for a long time, and let's take a look at this clip where Well, let's just take a look.
This is kind of a long route, but you're talking about how the great apostasy, 1800 years of the church not being on earth, doesn't make any sense to you. And I'm trying to put that up against the belief that basically...
I'm just going to set it up a little bit here. So he was making the critique earlier on in the video that, like, why would God set up his church only to have it disappear for like 1800 years? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would he even bother to set it up? Like, shouldn't he have, like, once he set it up, it stays forever? Anyway, let's keep going.
Most of the world outside of like Europe and a little bit of North Africa and the Middle East didn't have access to the normative path to salvation. And usually, you know, people will say these things of like the exception proves the rule. But in the case of the way Christianity views salvation, most of humans throughout most of history are in the exception, not in what you're saying the rule. So at that point, is it even a rule? Because most of the people are in this exception, are in kind of like this mysterious, we don't know what's going on. It's not the normative path. There must be some other thing that we don't know about that might happen to them, maybe or maybe not. So
do you want to add anything here? I just want to make sure we're not like getting some copyright stuff. Any thoughts on that so far, Luke? Or
yeah, I
agree with yourself.
I do agree. I think he's a smart guy. He's decently articulate with what he's saying. He sounds smarter if you play him at 2 times speed, but be that as it may, he's all right. When you're presented with a criticism, not that you need to dodge that criticism, but it usually works very well to try to establish some level of intellectual consistency. Yeah. And kind of take it and say, I understand why that would seem like a problem to you. However, and then present them something in their own theology that's on par with what they were critiquing you with. This works very well with the Joseph Smith failed prophecies thing. Like, well, Deuteronomy says, if the prophet says something and it doesn't come to pass, then you are not supposed to fear him and you're actually supposed to kill him. And Joseph Smith gave a false prophecy. What they don't realize is there's like 4 or 5 other instances in the Old Testament itself where people who have books named after them, like Ezekiel, will prophesy something like that Tyre is going to be destroyed and just wiped completely off the map, and then it never happens. And even the Bible itself explains that it never happens, and the archaeology shows that that thing never happens. And so there's such thing as conditional prophecy. And if the criterion for the prophecy are not met, then the prophecy doesn't come to pass. And sometimes those criteria are not even explicitly laid out. It's just implied or assumed. And Christians don't know that about their faith. And this is what can be very helpful about just kind of learning, not to learn talking points against another faith, but just to dig into the scholarship and the thought that's put behind other faiths in explaining things. And you start to realize that, oh, a lot of the way that they explain their faith is the same way that I would explain my faith. It's just that a lot of people attacking my faith don't know that their faith contains the same flaws. Right. And so this is kind of what I was doing with the Great Apostasy, is they're saying, oh my gosh, there's an 1800-year gap, like right after Christ died. And I'm saying, hold on. You believe that baptism and belief in Christ is the way to be saved, and there's nothing after death that you do, like this life is it. But that path to salvation is not available to the vast majority of humans throughout all of human history. And so I understand why it seems weird to you that there's this 1800-year gap in salvation, but it also seems weird to me that there is a 1600-year gap where what you believe is salvation is not offered to most of mankind.
There's even a gap right now with tons of people in parts of the world that don't have access to Christianity. Yeah.
And it's not just like little uncontacted couple dozen people, tribes in the Amazon or something like that. We're talking about like billions. The country of India, the country of China, the Middle East, like major world regions. Yeah,
I think that's an excellent point to go back at him when he's saying, well, 1,800 years. And you also point out in here that like it's not that big of a deal for us because we believe in things like baptism for the dead. Because
then the temples get established, and then that normative path to salvation extends backwards. Exactly. And during the millennium, we get everything that's needed to go back. They're being taught in the spirit world, just like a continuation of this life, but without the body. whatever they miss, they get there, and then the ordinances are offered to them. So we actually have an explanation for all of human history with no gaps for a normative path to salvation that's flat across the board. Christians, whether they're Catholic, whether they're Orthodox, whether they're Protestant, have nothing even close to that. And so it's kind of ironic when they start to attack the Great Apostasy for this 1800-year gap right after the death of the apostles, when they have a similar massive gap that remains unexplained. So we don't need to do the rest of the clip because I said all of it. But if you want to go to the last 15 seconds or so, I think his response was pretty interesting here. And for people who are kind of hesitant on learning apologetics, this might give you maybe some motivation to look into it a little more.
Okay, let's hear it.
Go make disciples of all nations, that sort of thing. But you do bring up an interesting point. And again, like I'm having to wrap my head around a lot of this because I haven't spoke to a lot of competent Mormons, if I'm being honest with you.
Okay. So that's it. Is when you present stuff like this to them, when you understand their religion well enough, not for the purpose of just tearing it apart, like, oh, I need to, because that's what people do to us and with the Book of Mormon, and we don't like it when people do that. But when you kind of learn their faith on their terms, then you can point out and say, hey, wait a second, like, because we bring such a new and unique perspective that people who are very caught up in like Catholic versus Protestant, Orthodox versus Catholic versus Protestant versus different denominations within Protestantism, when they're caught up in those paradigms and those worldviews, a Latter-day Saint who's informed on what they believe and what that person believes as a Latter-day Saint can come into the conversation and introduce new thought patterns, paradigm shifting thought patterns that I'm under no illusion that he's going to get baptized next week or something like that. But, 10,000 people watch this video, maybe one of them will have this kind of new way of thinking about something that will lead them to want to investigate and get the spiritual witness
but what
for
a
themselves.
slap in the face of the church. I haven't talked to a lot of competent, you should have said something back. I don't know, like, well, there's not a lot of competent Eastern Orthodox either. I'm just kidding. No, there are, though.
The problem is I did agree with them. Like, I do think this is a place that we can be better on.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and this is kind of a fun conversation back and forth in the chat, but like, I don't want it to be this thing where it's like only those who, fully can grasp the philosophical arguments of the Trinity are allowed to have these conversations online. It's like, at the end of the day, like, you have a testimony and you shouldn't be ashamed of it. And if someone wants to talk, I think that's fine. I mean, I do think you got to be careful because there's people who are trying to trap certain individuals and like just to, win points and get likes and, score some big points, which maybe that's what he was trying to do. And you didn't allow him to do that. In fact, I think you did the opposite. But yeah, anyway, it's kind of an interesting thing. I hope people don't feel shy to share the gospel or talk about these things because they don't know everything. I don't think anyone knows everything. Totally. Yeah.
The thing you should feel shy about, I think, is to say stuff that you're not informed about. And I have been so guilty of this. And like, as I've learned more, I'm like, oh man, that one analogy that I made on my mission to like 50 different people probably was not the best.
Yeah, we all have things like that.
But part of it is just cultivating a kind of humility of trying to stay focused on what you do know without extrapolating or assuming or something like that. And then if you feel like you want to expand that knowledge base, if it's going to be helpful to you, you actually have more of the tools to do that, and you're in a better position to that because you're not just assuming that you know how things are.
We shouldn't be lazy learners, but the confidence you had to speak up on your mission, even though you might have said the wrong things on occasion here and there, at the end of the day, it's the Spirit that convinces people. I don't think people are going to remember any argument that you gave, for example, but it's more of like the spirit of the message. And we all say things that are incorrect at times. So I think that's important to consider, that like as long as it doesn't stop us from speaking, it doesn't paralyze us from speaking, then the humility needs to be there for sure. Any last thoughts on this video that you had. Anything else you wanted to share? I thought you had some great moments. Again, everyone who's watching, go check that out after you're finishing watching this live stream. Watch it on 2 times the speed if you don't like the 3 hours. That's what I did. no,
that's what I did when I listened back to it.
No, it's actually a very compelling conversation. So it goes by fast. I was listening to it while I was working today, and there's not any dull moments because it's just like bam, 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 and Luke did a fantastic job. And you got to check out. So like Luke gets a little fiery. Luke just like straight up calls him.
I'm pointed.
Well,
yeah,
not him specifically, but like, what was the part I'm thinking of? Help me out here, where you were just like, I don't want to be rude, but bam. Do you remember that?
I did it a little towards the beginning, and then I did it again towards the end.
You did it hard at the end. Yeah.
I basically expressed my belief that the Lord is deeply offended in some sense when people.
That's what it is.
When people try to take these creeds and use it as the rule upon all Christians and start to kick people out of the club based on these creeds that were made by people they admit were not
perfect
apostolic. The positive faith ended back in 70 AD or something, but then 300 years later we get to decide who's Christian or not, even though we don't possess that authority by our own admission. So I very pointedly and I think directly explained that I think that offends the Lord, and I don't think it's okay. And I am not going to make any apologies for what Joseph Smith recounted to be what was told to him in the first vision about the creeds and how they were abominations. I'm not going to apologize for that.
Amen, brother. I love it. I love that part. That was awesome and bold. Welcome, Professor Chimp, to the Pachyderm membership. But let's get into the next segment. The next segment here, we're going to do the what if Joseph Smith were a murderer. We're going to talk about some very interesting conversations about church history and where that can challenge your faith. This is Trunk Treasure. So speaking of members, I need to shout out the purpose of the channel and those who are helping contribute to make this channel a success. So the purpose of this channel is to elevate members of the church by building bridges of understanding through fun and informative content, and to help honest actors to take the church seriously by exposing the limitations of critics and correcting misconceptions. I, of course, come at this through my own lens, which is, I guess, analytical data. That's how I like to do things. But anyway, so shout out to the Pachyderm members. So Professor Chimp just joined. That's why you're not on here, but you will be for the future. Jacob Wardle, and we have Mammoth members, Jared Jensen, Kiori, Brooke Sabin, Thorgus, and Through the Mist. What these memberships give you is, I like to edit things a lot, and sometimes I have some footage that's left over that I literally just toss in the trash. And so you get to take a look at some of that footage. I'm not hiding anything, so if you're not a member, you can still see that, like the message I'm trying to get out there. But if you want to watch like some unfiltered stuff, that's how you do it. And that's just kind of the reward I give you for helping make this channel possible. All the proceeds that I collect just go to help making the channel better. So I made this video. It's actually one that I just popped out in the process of making another video. I liked this imagery that I put here. I'm gonna, I guess, pat myself on the back because,
a little shelf.
There's a shelf that's breaking because this heavy church history book is coming down. I wish you were breaking a little bit more, but you got like Joseph Smith on there, Moroni, the Book of Mormon. But then church history is this big book that's just cracking it. And this is a phrase you'll hear a lot on the ex-Mormon subreddit called what broke your shelf, meaning like what is it that finally like made you decide the church is not true anymore. And so I wanted to just take a second and talk about why I think church history shouldn't be that. So Luke, you got a chance to watch this video. Go ahead, let's hear it. Let's hear it. Where like what'd you think? Where do I go right? Where do I go wrong?
Also a very good video, and I think it has a continuation of this theme of humility in what you know and what you don't know, and a recognition, especially if you haven't really looked at history too much before, which I haven't as much as I could. A lot of people probably haven't either. at the very least, you have to start somewhere. Like at some point, you didn't really know anything about history and how it works. And so just learning how and why, you don't need to freak out if you see this one source that where David Whitmer said that the Lord told him with just as much surety that he told him the Book of Mormon is true, that he needed to leave the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And oh my gosh, that blows up the witnesses, which blows up the rest of the witnesses, which blows up the Book of Mormon, which blows up the whole church. Oh my gosh, it's all crumbling down.
Mhm.
And just kind of learning how history works and how there's usually not a single bullet that takes something down. There's a lot of contextualization that needs to happen. In the case of the David Whitmer quote, that happened when he was facing a lot of persecution from church members after he'd already left. And a certain sect of them were being very mean to him. And so he received
Very
a
mean.
spiritual prompting that he needed to leave the presence of the members of the church, not that he needed to remove his name from the church. And then he likened the force of that prompting to the force that he had with the Book of Mormon. So it gets resolved, but if you just take it on the surface level without trying to understand the context behind it, then it can be deeply problematic. And so that's what I think you were trying to convey with the video. And I think it was done in a very good, succinct, and short way.
Thank you. So yeah, I mean, I was watching Johnny Harris. He's a famous YouTuber who's made a series on Mormons. I'm sure many of you are familiar with who Johnny Harris is. And he loves to he just talks about the history, but he like very heavily implies that like the history is creepy and that it's obviously false. He like, in one of his videos, he like was like, I can't believe I used to believe this stuff, kind of a thing, you know, like, but he doesn't really get into much arguments about it. He just shows you the history. And a lot of what he says, besides like the way it's presented all creepy and weird, isn't like technically wrong, but it is on purpose skewed to be a little creepy. And some of it, you know, some of our history is a little uncomfortable potentially. And so in this video, I kind of wanted to make, I think, 2 points that I wanted to make. I just wanted to make 2 points. This is how I see it, because I have said this, I've gone on the record. I think just history sucks. It's terrible. I think everyone should have like a healthy level of skepticism when it comes to history, because it's rooted in data that is both highly biased, because what survives is not random, and highly discrete. You know, we have like, you know, maybe something from this year and then like a gap and then something from this year. And the further back you go, the more discrete it becomes, the more biased it becomes. You know, what survives is not random. What gets written down is not random. And as a scientist, right, to me, like the idea that we could draw any conclusions from such crappy data kind of
Yes.
bothers me and annoys me. So like everything I hear about history, I think you should take with a grain of salt. That's not saying that like there's certain things that like have good evidence for them, you know, but like there's so much subjective conjecture that historians have to put in their models that, you know, like it likely doesn't look exactly like that. Like the phrase for like in statistics, for example, is that like every model is wrong, some are useful. Well,
Yeah,
in
I
history,
love that phrase.
yeah, in history, your models like, it's a very difficult thing. So that was my point number one. It's just like whatever you hear, have a healthy level of skepticism, because like, you know, like it could have been anything. But my second point was, okay, so let's suppose we do find something in history that we have good reason to believe is accurate, right? And I use Joseph Smith as an example, but like I think this could apply to Brigham Young, who a lot of people struggle with some of the stuff Brigham Young has said or not said in the past. Like there's a lot of a nuance there, obviously. But if someone were to do something immoral, like Joseph Smith, I think we should not reject the message because of the messenger. So I talk about bulverism. This is a term I came across a couple, like 5 years ago or so, which is from C.S. Lewis. And it's basically this fallacy. It's a combination of a few fallacies. So, I mean, you don't have to use the term bulverism. You could call it something else. It's kind of like an ad hominem mixed in with a couple other things. But it's a fallacy where someone just dismisses the argument by attacking the person's motives or background instead of addressing like the argument's logic. And so like they could like instead talk about the motive for why they made that argument as opposed to looking at like the argument or like the claim. They could talk about the character of the person instead of looking at the claim, but it's all kind of just dodging the claim, which is why it's a logical fallacy. Now, we all commit logical fallacies all the time in our everyday communication. So I don't want to like say like some people are like, oh, church members probably commit that all the time. Like, yeah, I'm sure we do. Like, I'm sure I commit it all the time. But when it comes to church history, and I want to get your thoughts on this, but let me just kind of tell you how I see it, and then I want to hear what you think. So imagine, let me put this as like a story and see if this makes sense of how I see it. So imagine you have cancer, terminal cancer. You're at the hospital, and they dismiss you. The doctors tell you there's no cure. You're literally going to die tomorrow. Just go out, have fun. There's no point in you being here. You'll be dead tomorrow. They send you on your way. And you're walking along. You stop at a park bench. You're just like, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to relax. My life is over. And a stranger sits next to you. Okay? Stranger. You start talking. Seems like a nice guy. And he's like, hey, I know what you're going through. And I got a fix for you. Maybe he puts his hand on your shoulder. You're like, okay. And you start talking back and forth. You feel like you can trust him. He seems like a really friendly guy, but whatever, It's your last day on earth. He says, hey, take this gold pill. Everything's going to be fine. Gold pill, Luke, gold. Okay. So you take the pill. Besides, you don't have anything to lose, right? You're going to die the next day. Okay, miraculously, you're healed. You go back to the doctors. The doctors find zero cancer. They demonstrate the pill worked great. In fact, they're begging you to take their medical degrees because you obviously know more than they do. I'm just kidding. No, but like they clearly don't know what they're doing. No, but it's a miracle. Nothing short of a miracle. You go to thank the man who gave you the pill, and he's gone. Dun dun dun. Just for dramatic sake, he's gone. Like, where'd he go? Was he one of the three Nephites? Okay. Later, you're telling people about the miracle, and one of the nurses says, wait, that man gave you the pill? Well, don't you know? He murdered my brother. Okay. So it's like, now, did the man murder this nurse's brother? Who knows?
You don't know.
But certainly, it would be a mistake to claim that because of that knowledge, the gold pill didn't work, right? Could the pill have been a coincidence? Sure. But to reject that suddenly because of this claim on him being a murderer is like textbook example of Bolverism. And so,
I'm seeing a scripture parallel here when Jesus cured the blind man.
Okay, let's hear it.
Blood. It's very similar to your example because Jesus cures him by putting the mud on his eyes and then telling him to go wash somewhere else. So Jesus is not present when at least the completion of the healing takes place. And he's all happy and he goes and he's talking to the Pharisees, the Sadducees, or the scribes, one of them. We'll call them the Pharisees for the sake of the story. And they're trying to like explain to him like, no, this Jesus guy, like he's a devil. It's bad. You need to do it. And he's like, bros, I can see now.
Yeah.
And it's not even like he's trying to dismiss what they're saying. He's like, I'm not even going to talk about that because that's above my pay grade. What I can speak to though, is the fact that I can see. And
yeah. No,
so I don't know if this is where you're trying to go with it, but when you
yes.
have the fruits of the gospel in your life, that counts for something. Like people try to dismiss it out of hand so quickly, but it counts for something. Like con men typically don't improve the lives of somebody living in the middle of Texas 200 years after they died. It's just not really the pattern.
Right.
But Joseph Smith does follow that pattern for millions of people around the world.
Yeah, like if the gold pill worked, which, the gold pill obviously represents, the restoration, then no amount of accusation can like change the fact that it worked. Like if it worked, it worked, And so, okay. So I'm thinking about this because there's some interesting questions that people had. And by the way, so in the video, I'm very much talking to members of the church. What I'm trying to do in this video is talk to members of the church about why church history shouldn't, cause them to lose their faith, and kind of remind them that like the reason you have your faith is not because you studied church history and you're like, hey, this is perfect. It's because ideally you had some kind of spiritual witness, and you have like, I talk a little bit about Jacob Hansen's epistemological framework and how, like church history really only kind of fits into one of those areas. And so like, but like your testimony hopefully is not built on just church history. So, so let me get to this comment here, because it brought up a good question that I want to explore with you, Luke. This is from mcable217. They said, is there anything Joseph could have done that would dissuade you from thinking he is a prophet? E.g., for example, non-contingent prophecies don't come true, Joseph murdered multiple people, etc. Hey, that's where we're getting the murder thing from. What would fall outside of the realm of imperfect and into the realm of disqualifying? That's a more interesting topic to discuss. I think it is interesting. So, Luke, do you want to take the first stab at this? What is your initial reaction to this? Is there any... So I kind of laid out, like, basically what you hear in church history, even if Joseph were like a bad guy, the fruits of what he produced are positive. The pill worked. And so, like, it almost to me, and again, this is something I'm trying to explore, it almost to me doesn't really matter, because the fruits that came out to him, from him, mean that God used him as an instrument. That doesn't mean that he was perfect. That doesn't mean he didn't commit mistakes. He might have done things that I think are bad. I actually think Joseph Smith was a great guy. I have like very strong feelings about that. But like, for the sake of what we're talking about here, I almost have to ask myself, is there actually anything that would dissuade me? Like, if I found out Joseph was a murderer, just like kind of this gold pill story, I'm kind of thinking, well, like maybe he was, but like that didn't stop God from using him, which is kind of an interesting thing. Like, I don't know why God would just use a murderer, but at the same time, I can't like deny that the gold pill worked. You know what I mean? So anyway, I'm going to stop talking. I want to hear your thoughts, Luke. Where do you think the line is?
Yeah, I would say serial axe murder of children would definitely put him over the line.
Yeah.
So like it depends on how antagonistic and a smart aleck this person was trying to be with the question. It's very hard to read tone from comments.
Real quick, Yori says, remember that awkward moment when Moses unalived a dude? So he's just pointing out, you're kind of doing what you were doing earlier, where it's like, well, Moses like literally killed a man. Like what you were doing with the Eastern Orthodox person. Yes. Anyway, keep going though. I feel like you had more to say. Yeah.
So serial axe murder of children would put him over the line. And depending on how much of a smart aleck this person's trying to be with the comment, I think what it's trying to get at is a philosopher of science introduced this idea that is widely accepted now. Karl Popper, I think was the name, was the idea that in order for you to have a valid thesis, it needs to be falsifiable. And if there's no way that your thesis is ever going to be falsified, then it's not worth anything as a thesis, because it can't tell you anything about reality, because you've set up the parameters of the game such that it can't be disproven. So we always need to be working with falsifiable theses in order to establish truth. I think that's a very good point to make. The problem is that you're kind of saying everything else aside, if this one thing happened, doesn't that make the whole thing fall down? And at some point, it's kind of like you're coming up with their hypothetical situations, first of all, which can only get you so far. And then second of all, it would be like, well, what if your husband appeared like he loved you a ton in every way possible, but then he was just pretending? And like, how would you know if he was pretending or not? And you kind of create this scenario where you couldn't posit a scenario it's kind of unfalsifiable in the opposite direction. Like, you can't posit a scenario where you can prove your husband loved you, because there's always like, well, what if he was pretending? Well, what if this? Well, what if this?
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think that, like, the fact of the matter is that Joseph Smith was not a serial axe murderer of children. And so I don't think we need to come up with hypothetical scenarios to test the validity of the faith, because that's not how history works. Like, there's not going to be some new court case that nobody knew about where Joseph Smith was.
What if they uncover
It wasn't
something?
tainted at all. Yeah, it wasn't tainted. Like, the jury was perfect. In fact, his own family was on the jury. I don't know how that would have ended up happening, but they were there, and like, they all convicted him, and somehow we just didn't know about this, and it came
Until
out.
now.
Then wouldn't the church be not true? It's like, yes. And what's your point? Because it's just, we're operating outside of reality now, and so you can just kind of make up whatever you want to, and it doesn't really get us anywhere.
So help me out here.
That was a bit of I had a daughter that kept me up, little baby. She's really cute, but I was up for like 45 minutes in the middle of the night.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So my brain's working at not full capacity, but
No, sounds great. So, okay, I agree with you. Like, I think it is a mistake to claim that nothing could possibly damage your faith. To kind of get into your falsifiable stuff there. Like, I totally agree with that. I think, though, what would challenge the faith is more of attacking like the epistemology lens that you brought to the table to get the faith in the first place. So, like, if you got your testimony based on the false assumption that like church history is perfect and like there's nothing wrong, then like obviously that would shake your faith, because it's like attacking that. But that's not how most Latter-day Saints get their testimony, right? They experience something. And so, like, if you experience, like, if you had a spiritual experience of like Jesus coming to you and saying like, no, you need, like, this church is not true. I think every member, well, I mean, I would hope every member would be like, yeah, I'm going with Jesus here. I'm going to follow the Jesus, because I mean, that's ultimately what we're trying to do. Which is why I wanted to kind of talk about Jacob's collective witness model. So I agree that like it's a bad idea to not have like a falsifiable claim. Like, there can be things that should persuade you to go a different way, and I think that's a great example. Like, Jesus comes down and tells you to go a different way. There you go. But I would argue that I don't think you can use church history as a way to falsify the claims of the restoration. I don't think you can. And, we have the Book of Mormon. We have these fruits. No matter what gets dug up, like, I don't know, suppose they dig up something that's like, Joseph did what? He drank whiskey? Whiskey.
Well, we already know that.
Yeah, like things like that. I mean, luckily for us, I actually think Joseph has made it pretty easy for us, because he's a pretty good guy. But let's say, like, if there were something, though, I don't see how that would, because help me out here a little bit, because I've thought about this for a second. Let's say like somehow Joseph Smith had this diary and he's like, yeah, and I made this all up and it's all fake. It's in his handwriting. He's like, no, I'm not being forced to write this, and like somehow we can prove that he wasn't forced to write this.
Sound, body, and mind.
Okay,
yeah.
That would mean, when we say that, mean the church is no longer true. That's kind of an interesting question, because there's no like single claim of truth necessarily. Okay, wait, hang on with me for a moment. We have the authority in the church, and that's like the claim of the authenticity of this being Christ's church is the authority. You talked about that in like why the apostasy was an apostasy. It's not because people weren't enlightened by the Spirit. It's because the authority to act in God's name was temporarily removed from the earth. Okay, so if Joseph were just like making up the authority thing, okay, there's kind of two cases here. Number one, authority matters. Okay, if authority matters, then you got to seek where it's at and follow through. If authority doesn't matter, then your covenants are still valid because the authority didn't matter for you to make them. And so, like, at the end of the day, we're all seeking a relationship with God, right? That's what the religion's all about. And so if something about what Joseph said were not true. You know, like maybe the historicity of the Book of Mormon isn't exactly, you know, it's more just like inspired fiction, like people say. Again, I don't believe this. I'm just trying to talk here and explore things for people who might be thinking he doesn't believe in the Book of Mormon. No, I do. But like, there's a lot of value that came out of the Restoration, and I'm having a hard time like knowing like separate. And maybe it's supposed to be like hard to separate, but it's like the pre-earth
it almost turns into like the immovable object versus the unstoppable force.
Yeah, it kind of is that.
Both of them, both of them should win, but not one can win. And so when you're getting into these hypotheticals, they're interesting, but at the end of the day, they're hypotheticals. And so how much can they inform reality? Like hypothetically, we could do a mind experiment where tomorrow we wake up and it turns out we were just in a simulation and the Nazis actually did win World War II, but we were just really sad about that. And so we created a fake reality that would imagine what it was like if they didn't win World War II. And we had gone into that and forgotten about it. And we woke up tomorrow like, oh, well, wouldn't that be interesting? Like, what would it be like if the Nazis, but that didn't happen,
right.
Or at least it's not tomorrow yet. So we don't know if we're going to wake up or not and find that out. And so there's a
knock on wood. Thanks a lot. Just kidding.
Yeah.
No, but here's the thing,
a point at which the hypothetical like ceases to inform anything about reality, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And I think when critics of the church try to really pound into these hypotheticals, it shows the weakness of their argument because they need to rely on, well, what if I prove that you were wrong? Then would you be wrong?
Well,
it's like, yes,
I don't know if critics are actually saying that. That's me saying that.
I literally.
Okay.
Steve Pint was talking about he wants to do this Book of Mormon debate because Jacob Hansen had challenged John Dehlin to do a debate on a naturalistic explanation for the Book of Mormon. And this other guy, Colby, said, oh, I'll do it, even though I'm not the person you challenged to debate. The topic's now going to be historicity. Now the topic's going to be historicity of the Book of Mormon. And so I asked him, like, why did you feel the need to change it? And he's like, well, hypothetically, if I proved beyond a shadow of the, he's a lawyer, if I made a rock solid case that the Book of Mormon wasn't historical, then would the other questions even matter? Like, no. On the flip side, hypothetically, if we're going to do that, if I made a rock solid case that the 8 and 3 witnesses had an authentic spiritual experience of golden plates that, and Joseph Smith translated by the power of God in the case of the 3 witnesses, wouldn't your case then not matter at all? Like, we could just pause it. We could just start throwing hypotheticals at each other all day. And that's not really going to get anywhere, except for the fact that it's going to get the critic out of the hot seat, because then they can just like, well, what if we pretended that I had a really good argument against you? Then what would happen?
Sure.
It's like, well, maybe just present your argument instead of us just pretending that you have a really good one.
Okay, but what about this? Okay, so I'm talking about hypotheticals here because I'm trying to like get into the shoes of some people. But for a lot of people, there are things in church history, and I'm talking about extremes to kind of make the point, as opposed to like saying like, for the sake of I don't know, like saying that these could happen. Because what I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to get in the shoes of someone who has found something in church history that bothers them. And so like a lot of things in church history don't bother me. So I'm trying to find something that like even the most loyal Latter-day Saint could potentially be bothered by. So we can understand those who are bothered by, I don't know, Joseph Smith's polygamy,
so like
for example.
Someone who doesn't know about Fanny Alger and then they find out about her.
Yeah, because like
what's the process to approaching that?
You read on ex-Mormon Reddit, and you know people cite church history for one of the reasons that they lost their faith because they feel like things were hidden. They find out that Brigham Young might have had some slaves with him when they arrived in Utah. They find out these things that are uncomfortable, and they start to question things. And so the reason I'm trying to like go to the extreme here is I'm trying to understand. I'm just trying to explore like where I argue that like really nothing in like the church history should really impact much of your testimony. But I don't know, as this person points out, where exactly those limits are. Because to me, it's like it's really hard for me to say like, like, and I think you bring up a good point. Like, we don't really have to talk about these hypotheticals because they're just hypotheticals, like Joseph murdering people. Like, if he murdered people, I think we would have known about, I mean, I guess some people are claiming that he shot back when he was getting murdered in Carthage.
Yeah, but that was based. That wasn't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then you bring up Moses for those Christians, brothers and sisters who might have a problem with some of the stuff. But like, so I get your point. Like maybe that's the answer. Maybe that really is just as simple as like, hey, like, let's just keep in the realm of non-hypothetical and go from there. And for those that are struggling, some of the stuff that I'm saying, I think still is important. Like these things are only one small maybe part of why you believe in the first place. And so it shouldn't be what crumbles your testimony to the ground. Like, I don't know, like for me, I'll just say it from my perspective. When I hear something like about church history that's a little bit like, ooh, but did you know this? It doesn't really bother me because that's just how I frame things.
So it's more, you're trying to put yourself in the mindset of someone who wouldn't have that reaction.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the point of my video was like, hey, like, don't have this reaction because you probably shouldn't, because you're probably committing bulverism, or you're taking history way too seriously, and that's not what your testimony is built on. If I'm assuming these are members of the church, faithful members. I'm trying to talk to people who might have found something they don't like, and I know it does bother people. At least reportedly, people say that certain things in history bother them, and so I'm trying to explain kind of why it doesn't bother me, but like I don't have good answers for like these hypotheticals for like if something were so big, like you said, like axe murdering children, like that's a really difficult hypothetical. And so it can be, I think it is good to kind of think about it a little bit, but without, I do see where you're coming from, where it's like, well, if I had a good argument, then how would you answer that? Because they don't. So anyway, am I making any sense here, Luke? Help me out.
It makes sense to me. I think it's very case by case. Like, for example, in the case of Brigham Young racism, it would be more of a case of, well, let's explore how he ranks compared to the context that he lived in. And I think it comes out that Brigham Young was remarkably egalitarian and fair across races in a way that was unusual for his time, even though today, if you transported him to here in 2025, he would totally be a racist.
Right.
Totally. But back then, and does that count for anything? Like, does the gospel make people acceptable to 2025 standards? Or would it be good enough if the gospel made people above average in their own context? Like, and kind of looking at not necessarily, there is a point to like, well, let's get more history and more context, but also just like, what are the questions that we're asking of this scenario that would lead us in either direction? What assumptions are we making? Or in the case of the church lying to you, it's like, so is the concern what Joseph Smith did, or that your seminary teacher gave you the impression that something like that didn't exist? And is the church not true if your seminary teacher didn't say a certain thing in one 5-minute segment of their lesson when you were 15, or, and kind of, and you would have to be careful if you're kind of doing this one-on-one with a person, that you're not making light of the concerns that they're expressing. But at the very least, you want to come out with an A to B to C, a logical flow of why this would make me leave the church, why this would disprove the church, instead of, oh, that's uncomfortable, well, I gotta leave now. Like, But if that's the level that it's being engaged with, maybe we could go a little deeper and explore a little more.
I mean, I guess at the end of the day, what it really comes down to is there's nothing in church history that for me causes those issues. And like, maybe hypothetically there could be, but like, we can think about that if that were ever actually the case. And there's like a thing, if Joseph were racist, let's say, like, I disagree with racism, right? I'm not afraid to say it. But like, you read the Book of Mormon and it's like, okay, like, it's just hard to reconcile those two. Either he wasn't actually a racist and that accusation is false, or God somehow channeled someone to write such a beautiful thing of the Book of Mormon that is very, I think, if you read it from cover to cover, instead of just taking like verses in isolation, very like the gospel's for everyone, bond or free, black or white, you know. And so like that's where it gets kind of like hard to reconcile some of this stuff, if that ever happened. But luckily, you know, it, at least as I see, it's very coherent. And anyway, long story short, don't commit bulverism. Don't reject Joseph Smith just because you heard about something that you didn't like that he did or did not do. You just heard about it. And don't throw away your faith just because there's something that's a little bit uncomfortable. It's like, history's messy. I think Latter-day Saints should be comfortable that history is messy and has some nuance, you know? So anyway, that was kind of the point of my video. One last comment here. It's kind of a whole nother topic. We'll see how much time we can actually spend on this, because I want to get to some of the breaking news here. But White Layman Knight, says, I still don't know how to think about moral outcomes, or rather the good fruits position. So this is kind of a criticism of the Hansen 5, the Jacob Hansen's collective witness model. He says, yes, I see several good things come from the membership, but why do we not give credit to those individuals instead of assign credit to Joseph Smith's doctrinal restoration? But what about the bad fruits? He isn't accountable for these. For example, does Warren Jeffs even exist without Joseph Smith? I have a lot of thoughts on this one. I just kind of wanted to address them in this live stream, and I want to see what you thought, Luke. So basically what they're saying is like, they don't know how moral outcomes as a evidence for the authenticity of the church is a good argument when you could, like, you know, pick out people like Warren Jeffs who might be a fruit of Joseph Smith, if I were to try and stillman that. So your thoughts, Luke?
I do think that the Warren Jeffs one is a stretch, because you can find people in basically every single belief system, not even religion, but just belief system, that have done crazy things, and the exception proves the rule. The exception is not the rule. So I don't think you really get any track with Warren Jeffs, like people, David Koresh, the Kool-Aid incident, all that kind of stuff.
Terrible.
Like those, they pulled those things off just fine without Joseph Smith and the restored gospel. The weird suicide alien cults where like the comet is passing and we gotta hop on it, and it's very important, and like very educated people are going along with this, and they all get together and wear the same thing that doesn't have any metal in it.
Educated does not mean smart.
Exactly.
So
and
I'll be the first.
Yeah, all kill themselves at the same time for the comet. Like, obviously this kind of thing, or even just bad Harvey Weinstein or Epstein or something like that, they pulled off whatever it was they pulled off just fine without the restored gospel propping them up. And so
yeah,
I don't think Warren Jeffs really proves anything other than it's a really good appeal to, is it ethos or pathos? It's not logos. But it's got that visceral reaction, like, oh, ethos. He was LDS and he did terrible stuff, and just that ick factor that you feel has some weight. And
Warren Jeff has the ick.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think
the fruits argument is a valid argument. It's not something you can put into a syllogism, but when a religion says this is going to produce X in your life, and then you do the thing and it produces X in your life, it's like Alma 32. You've conducted a scientific experiment. You've planted the word of God in your heart. And then the thing that they said was going to happen happened. And that counts for something.
It does. No,
you can't really put it into a syllogism, but it counts for something because it's doing what it said it would do. Like, typically we see that as a success. And it has the added bonus of being one of the only things that Jesus pointed to as an epistemology for determining what truth is and what he is. He gave the fruits argument.
Yes, he did.
Christians so often try to turn it into, he was saying theology. You'll know them by their theology. Like, they always twisted it. It's kind of weird, but he talked about fruits.
Yeah.
And so I think if you put any credence in what Jesus says as well, it it's another reason why fruit should count for something.
Yeah, and I responded to this comment and I gave some of my thoughts. I think you share a lot of them. I basically said, I think good people with or without the church would probably still be good people. Bad people with or without the church could probably still be bad people. But like, to me, it's not about what the individuals do, but what's done to them through the restoration. And over time, that can change behavior if they allow it to. Like you said, there might be like bad apples and a giant bunch. In fact, I think you have to look at the fruits argument in aggregate. You can cherry pick individuals all day long, but like,
yeah, you've done science and statistics. You know that's not
right.
That's
exactly.
not how it was
there
done.
will always be exceptions to the rule, but
is the average height 5'8"? Because this guy's 6'6". So
exactly.
No, that's not how that works. I'm sorry.
Right. Yeah. In aggregate, Latter-day Saints have extremely beneficial outcomes, wonderful fruits. Amazing. Like, of course, there's going to be a few Latter-day Saints that aren't good people, but it's not about the argument isn't about whether or not someone's good or bad, but it's like how it influences what is acted on you, not how you act, and then how your behavior could change over time. And in aggregate, how the Latter-day Saints are. I think that's what the moral outcome argument comes down to. So, yeah, Warren Jeffs, bad person, and I don't think it's I don't know. Hopefully, White Layman Knight. That, I don't know, makes sense a little bit. If you're sincerely asking that question, but I thought it'd be interesting to address. But I want to get into the breaking news of the day. We got to talk about some garments and the Daily Wire ordering a pint of Catholicism. So let's get into that.
Run.
Okay, you have met Pints with Aquinas, have you not?
I have, yes.
Have you met
It was a
any of the
wonderful
other
experience.
Daily Wire hosts?
I have not actually. No, but I guess Matt Fradd is a Daily Wire host now, so I have met. Well, in 2026.
Okay, question for you.
By the way, for those of you who don't know, it was announced yesterday, I think, that Pints with Aquinas,
yes, thank you,
a famous Catholic commentary / almost like a Joe Rogan. Like, instead of having a comedian on for 3 hours to just kind of shoot the breeze, he has like a nun on, or
Jordan Peterson,
a Catholic scholar, or Jordan Peterson on to like talk life and philosophy. And
Jordan Peterson's
the other person
episode
happens to be
great.
Catholic. Oh yeah, I think he's done 2 with him actually.
Has he done 2? I love it when Jordan
I
Peterson.
highly recommend the Andrew Clavin episode as well. Clavin is my
wait. Here's a question.
Political spirit animal.
Oh, wait. I was gonna say, if you were a Daily Wire host, who would you be and why? They have different like personalities.
If I could be one of them?
No. Like if you were like which one fits your personality the most?
Oh, like if I had to.
If you took a personality quiz, it's like
try to be one of them.
Daily Wire member are you? Like back in the late 2010s.
I feel I like Andrew.
Really?
More of a Michael Knowles.
Okay.
Or Ben Shapiro, depending on the topic.
Okay, who do you think I would be?
Overall, probably Michael Knowles. Who would you be?
Yeah, who would I be?
Honestly, most Mormons would probably be Michael Knowles, just because he's like the nicest, most pleasant. Not that the others are like super mean or anything.
Okay,
but just kind of the character is more of a. It gives Michael Knowles, as the kids might say.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So I know you're a big fan of the Daily Wire. I'm a big fan of the Daily Wire. My go-to person is not Andrew Clavin, as most people's is not, because I think he's like the least popular out of all. I like him. Yeah. So, is that who you listen to the most? Then is Andrew Clavin?
Well, he only has a show once a week, so
oh really?
I don't listen to. Yeah.
Oh, when did they?
I don't listen to him the most, but he is the one who I haven't missed an episode in I think 5 or 6 years.
Nice.
Just partly because he's only doing once a week now.
Yeah.
So it's easy. Get your little dose.
Yeah. Okay. So he's your favorite. My favorite is Ben Shapiro. I listen to him very frequently. He's every day.
You can't go wrong with Ben.
No, I love Ben. I listen to, I dabble in Michael Knowles and Matt Walsh and Andrew Clavin. I like it when they're all together. That's always pretty fun. But Ben Shapiro's, I have the same personality according to the personality test, the like 12 personality tests. He was like,
Oh, okay.
I took it
Okay.
before he took it, and then my wife watched it, and she's like, haha, you're the same personality as Ben Shapiro. No, she wasn't like making fun of me, but like,
Was it like the
I was like,
architect or something?
yes, the architect. Yeah.
Did
yeah.
I get it? Oh my
Yep,
gosh.
yep.
That was
And-
like 4 years ago.
Yep. And I was like, oh, maybe that's why I like Ben Shapiro, because like we have like a similar personality. And I like that. So as a Jew among a bunch of Christians, unfortunately, Ben Shapiro takes a lot of heat, not from his own friends and whatnot, but like online. Like there's some terrible things that are being said about poor Ben Shapiro. Like, how dare you say you're going to help pick up Charlie Kirk's microphone? You don't believe in
Yeah.
Jesus. Like,
Yeah.
So, and that's, I almost like feel like the same pains that we feel as Latter-day Saints, where they're like, you're not Christian, we hate you, you know. He has some of that too, you know. So anyway,
Mhm.
but yeah, give me your thoughts on Pints with Aquinas. Do you think this is a good move? I know that some people were a little upset with some of the Daily Wire crowd, it was the one editor of the Daily Wire that said some stuff
Cabot
about,
Phillips,
right, you made a whole video on
Yes,
that. People should
who
go
I
check it.
have met.
Oh, you
Yes,
have?
I guess I've also met him. Yeah.
Does he scream
Yeah.
raging anti-Mormon to you?
No,
Yeah.
doesn't.
I didn't think
and
so.
I explained it a little more in my video.
Yeah. Everyone go check out.
yeah.
Luke has a video where he goes through this about the Daily Wire.
Should
and why you
Mormons
shouldn't
cancel their
cancel
Daily
it.
Wire subscription?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hint: you shouldn't cancel it, and I agree with you on that.
If you have one.
if you have
we're
one,
not like
right.
forcing. You're still.
Do you
can still
have
get
one?
a temple recommend? I do. Yes.
Nice. I don't. I just do the free stuff for now.
There's plenty of free stuff to
Oh
do.
yeah. I mean, I can't even keep up with when it's during like a hot political season. You know, I can keep up a lot. But right now we're in like a BYU football season, and so that takes away a little bit of like my political interest. So I'm a little bit less in Ben Shapiro, a little bit more on Hans and Scotty G for my Utah people out there. You know, if you know, you know. I like listening to a lot of things. That's like my favorite medium. I love like radio and podcasts. It's amazing. Anyway, yeah. So are you happy? Are you sad? What are your thoughts?
I'm happy. Matt Fradd, a great guy. It is a little weird that the Jew and the Protestant and the billionaire oil people and who are presumably evangelical, I don't know, but I'm assuming, got together to basically make what seems to be now a Catholic
Oh, yeah.
conservative media company. Matt Walsh, Catholic. Michael Knowles, Catholic. Isabel Brown, who they just brought on, Catholic. Andrew Clavin, Anglican, which is like Catholic, but we don't like the Pope. and now
even Jordan Peterson, I mean, I know he's not really, but
his
wife is very Catholic.
Mhm.
And if he were going to be anything, he's a cultural Catholic.
You know what? He probably would be Eastern Orthodox, which
Okay,
is also
interesting.
as close as you can. Like Jonathan Pajot, Eastern Orthodox guy, like they're simpatico with each other. So he'd probably be
Simpatico,
Eastern
yeah.
Orthodox.
Nice.
Of course, after he died, he's going to convert almost immediately. Like we all know that, but I'm just talking about before he does. He would probably be before he sees the light. But I think it's great. That's a joke, by the way, for any antagonistic people who might be watching this. But I think it's great that Matt Fradd is coming on to the Daily Wire. I like to see them. I like to see politics not just being about politics. And, you know, people freak out about separation of church and state, but it's like a made up phrase. It kind of needs to die because people don't actually know what it means or what it's supposed to mean or why it's good that it would mean that thing. But to blend together, because what politics is that which has to deal with the polity, the population. Yeah. And so politics is just how we interact with each other, more focused on the government level, but it bleeds through. Politics is downstream of culture, is downstream of economics, is downstream of religion, is downstream of politics, and it just all blends together. And that's part of the philosophy that I'm trying to put forward on my channel of not how do we get are you a Republican into the Temple Recommend interview questions. That's not the goal, but or maybe it is, who knows. I wouldn't say if it was, but more to kind of to try to bring cultural awareness and energy with political awareness and energy with the religious, and try to make a whole out of those parts rather than segmenting them off from each other, because they don't belong like that. And some people try to do that to them. So that's a long-winded way of saying I think that a predominantly Catholic, and you might call it more devotional type of content, fits extremely nicely in with United States 2025 conservatism media conglomerates. I think they're good bedfellows, and I think that it's a great thing, despite the fact that Matt Fradd said and still holds the belief that it would be appropriate to burn the Mormon books, as he said it. And he defended it to Jacob Hansen in the studio. I was there watching.
Oh, wait. You got to tell me about this.
Well, yeah, because he said that thing, and this was back in August of 2023 when he said that.
Uh-huh.
And we were kind of like, what the heck? Like, and we did a whole episode on it. It was actually the very day that Midnight Mormons announced they were going to be Word Radio.
Okay.
That same live stream, we responded to Matt Fradd saying this.
Okay. I'm sure I watched it. That was a while ago, though.
Yeah. And then a year later, we go to his studio to do the Book of Mormon debate that Jacob Hansen had with Trent Horn.
Yeah.
And I was just kind of sitting off in the other room with his producer, looking through the door at them, smiling, because Trent Horn did exactly what we thought he would. But when we were talking, when they were talking either before or after, Jacob brought it up, and bless him, but Matt was there trying to say, like, well, no, like, but if you thought it was from the devil, wouldn't you burn it? Like, doesn't that make sense to you? And Jacob's like, no, not really. It's like, no, like, but if you think it's from the devil, like, I know you don't think the Book of Mormon's from the devil, but I do. And so, like, wouldn't it make sense to burn them? And so he's still on board with that. Maybe we'll get him out of it. What this means, though, is if the Daily Wire wants to continue to expand its reach, I think they filled up their Catholic roster pretty well, you know?
They need a
and then
Latter-day
they got Cabot
Saint.
Phillips, and exactly. You got the Jew.
Are you going to put in your
Protestant
application?
was the one that started it.
You should put in your application.
Working on it.
There you go.
Working on it.
I got to say real quick, one of your...
Maybe Thoughtful Faith will be the next one.
Yeah, maybe.
You know?
One of your better moments in that conversation with the Eastern Orthodox brother was this idea that the Book of Mormon is not satanic. And I can't believe, like, I just cannot believe. And I know it's because I've read the Book of Mormon, but like, just read it. And like, that is just like the silliest thing. So yeah, sorry for anyone who's wondering what I'm talking about. So in the conversation that Luke had with what's his name?
I don't know if he said it on his channel, so I don't want to like out him, but the channel's name is On Planks and Pieces.
So On Planks.
I don't
Pieces.
think he minds his name out there, but because I haven't seen him say it publicly, I don't say it.
I don't give a fuck. Yeah. Anyway, this Eastern Orthodox brother, that's what I'll call him, even though it's kind of a tongue twister, especially as it gets later at night. Basically was saying
On Planks and Pieces
that the Book of Mormon could have been written by a devil, and you pointed out, well, that's very convenient, because then that kind of like allows you to be like, yeah, it is supernatural, and explain like all the weird, because it is quite miraculous based on the historic. It is incredible, just a side tangent here, that we have this narrative about how the Book of Mormon was translated, and then in the manuscript, the first draft of the manuscript, you see it exactly like how it was described. You see the way it was written. Uninterrupted, like exactly how they described it. That's a miracle to me. It's like, you see that in the draft, like anyway. Yeah, he says,
well, and like paper was expensive and ink was expensive.
Yeah.
And you couldn't just hide away in your bedroom at night and flip on a light and do your edits and write stuff down and stuff like that, because you were sharing a room with 4 other siblings. So
no,
like
you can see that it's
this
dictated.
hidden work that he did somewhere else on. But I'm saying like maybe that's not the original. You know, maybe he had the notes in the hat
and
or
he was
something
like
like
reading
that.
it.
Like you guys, you don't realize it's not 2025. You can't just go in a corner on your phone and order stuff off of Amazon.
Yeah.
And then when it gets here, you go to your own private bedroom that you don't share with anybody and get it out and work on your things. And then, I made the Book of Mormon. Look at here. Like, he's out in the open. He's announced he's going to do it like 4 years before it actually happens. All eyes are on him. And there's no evidence that anything suspect happened before he says, all right, let's sit down and knock this out. And after 65 days of work later, in one draft, he just pops out a 265,000 word manuscript that only needs slight grammatical and punctuation editing.
Yeah,
it's insane.
Yeah, the manuscript is like, holy cow! Like, it should give you chills. Like the manuscript just like fits that narrative perfectly. Anyway, but we're
like
saying
demonic influence. And this was fascinating because Trent Horn in his debate with Jacob Hansen was going more. He didn't ascribe to a certain theory, but it definitely seemed to be more along the
he kind of just machine gunned a bunch of conspiracy type stuff.
Yeah, well, David
Martin
Whitmer
Harris
said this, and Martin Harris said
yeah.
this, and there was no horses. So like, But as far as I could tell, his thrust was more of a naturalistic explanation.
Yes, I think so.
But then a little bit later at Easter time, he did a video explaining the force of the evidence for the resurrection. And so he was going through and comparing it to a lot of other miracle claims and showing how it differed significantly. And it was a pretty long video. As I'm listening to it, I'm like, Trent, I know you know the Book of Mormon because you debated on it several months ago with Jacob. What are you going to say about it? Are you even going to bring it up? And then finally, about two-thirds of the way through the video, he's like, well, and we have to recognize that the devil can create what seem to be authentic spiritual experiences. So this could explain things like the Book of Mormon.
Yeah, the easiest debunk of that is just read it.
Exactly. But it has great explanatory power because instead of having to posit multiple independent, unlikely events.
Yep.
Because being able to produce.
Oh, sorry. You might have cut out for the guest there. I'm not sure. I could still hear you.
Oh,
but keep going. You're good now.
Oh yeah, I saw on the screen a little cutout. Because, so first of all, to produce golden plates, extremely difficult.
You can make those
Martin
in your
Harris
garage.
Was talking.
Do you know who I'm quoting? Do you know who it is?
Frank Turek.
Yes,
I do
love
know.
Frank
Turek,
Hayden
Carroll.
Frank Turek's
he's a
awesome.
cool dude. He's a cool dude.
He's one of my first YouTube loves of Christianity before.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Dan Vogel is like he got this tin that he was kind of scrounging away, and then he took it to the hill and like wrapped it together real quick, but he ran out of time, so that's why he had to pretend to hide the plate somewhere.
Do you see what these historians are doing? This is exactly what we talked about. Like, circle it all back, There's these discrete, interesting points, and they're trying to build this model, and there's so much conjecture.
I call it the Book of Mormon of the gaps. There's the God of the gaps.
Mormon of the gaps. I like that.
Oh, it's the God of the gaps. It's just anytime there's something you can't explain, like, oh, that must be God that fits in that thing. It's like anytime
there's almost
the historical record doesn't
right.
explain exactly what happens, that's where the Book of Mormon actually happened. So ignore all the evidence we have that's actually about the Book of Mormon, and the real story actually exists in these gaps of information. Like, what was Joseph Smith doing for 3 hours up on the hill? Well, that's when he must have put the whole thing together, but he ran out of time. And so that's why he had to come back. And it's the Book of Mormon of the gaps.
Yeah.
But anyway, you have multiple things. So how did he get the plates? How did he produce engraved sheets of metal bound together with the appearance of gold? Like, that's quite an undertaking that an 1800 subsistence farmer doesn't pull off every day, to say the least.
And wouldn't. If he had gold, he'd be rich and wouldn't be a farmer anymore.
Yeah. And how did he induce hypnotic trances that were shared experiences between three different people that never denied it, despite every reason to not do so? That's an independent variable. His ability to produce the plates, that's already very unlikely, is independent and unrelated to this new, completely unusual variable of producing the experience of the three witnesses. And then the book itself, being able to write that many words without any corrections, is a new independent, not related to the previous two things that he accomplished. Yeah, so you start stacking all these things up, and each one of them is like getting hit by lightning. But now instead of getting hit by lightning once, you got to get hit by lightning. When you stack it all up, it ends up being like 5 times that lightning has to hit the same spot in order for the Book of Mormon to be produced.
And you haven't even mentioned what's on the text. Yeah, which, anyway.
The devil argument, it handles all of that. Like, you can just, anything that seems supernatural, you can attribute to the supernatural.
Yep.
And it works great. It works fantastic until you get to the text.
Until you get to,
And then when you get to the text and you actually start reading past the first 7 verses in the Book of Mormon, you start to run into problems. So those problems continue all the way through Moroni 10. And so it's such a good theory because it gets so close. The only problem is it doesn't deal with the Book of Mormon itself.
Yep.
and then it falls apart. But
that pesky devil is leading millions to
Jacob Hansen
Christ.
And I went back when we were prepping on the debate. We went back and forth so many times because I was like, I think the devil argument actually is. And Jacob's like, no, that's such a stupid argument. Like, nobody would actually make that argument. I'm like, but the explanatory power, like, sure, it only gets halfway there, but nothing else does. So, like, it's the best of the bad arguments. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility.
Trent Horn is now using that argument since that debate.
His latest position on the Book of Mormon is demonic influence.
Is that after?
Which seems to be a shift.
Yeah.
Because he didn't say that in the debate. So it seems to be a shift. It seems like once he got into it and actually got confronted with Jacob Hansen's arguments, the next time he brought up the Book of Mormon,
he did have a video
to the demonic.
He did have a video, I think that was after the debate, that's like 5 reasons to doubt the Book of Mormon.
That video was just him telling his opening statement.
That's fair enough. I recently watched that one again, and I was like, I don't remember why it came up on my feed. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll watch this. I couldn't remember if it was part of that debate. Okay. I knew it was after the debate though. Okay, that's cool. Let's get to this last breaking news. For those who are waiting, the wait is over.
Sorry, I'm doing a word radio with you. We're going
overtime.
Triple overtime.
That's good. We're almost there. Mormon land. This is from the Salt Lake Tribune. LDS temple rituals have changed again and again. How and why? Okay. I might have directed you when I first told you about this. I thought at first that they were announcing new changes. I did read most of this article, and now I'm like blanking on it because that doesn't seem to indicate that there are new changes. I mean, things are changing a lot. And the question is like, where does it matter? So here's the big question, Luke, that a lot of people have. The Salt Lake Tribune is saying the endowment is going to change again potentially. I'm sure it will in some way or another. Things change. The garments have changed a little bit. We'll talk a little bit about that too. But should this be a concern to Latter-day Saints, Luke? If ordinances are supposed to be eternal, then how could they change? How could the temple change, Luke?
The ordinance is not the form. The ordinance is the covenant. That makes sense.
But have the covenants changed?
Oh, the covenants actually have kind of changed.
Okay, so then there you go. Same question, but about the covenant.
Yeah. Yeah. What you are doing with the covenant hasn't changed. I don't think it's appropriate to really talk about.
Yes.
Not that you can't talk about it because it is listed officially in other places, but like just kind of laying them all out on the table and analyzing them in a public setting.
There's things that we're not supposed to talk about explicitly, but they do publish like the laws that you learn about. And
yes.
So and we don't have to list them if you don't want, but like anyone who's been to the temple knows there's like 5 laws you can find them online.
I'm saying like what they are today. It's fine to talk about them. I think we should more, but if you're analyzing them a ton versus previous, because previously it was a lot more kind of
this is the hard
secretive
thing.
The whole thing was kind of under lock and key.
Here's the hard thing that kind of makes it hard for apologists. Like I think this is what you're kind of getting at. Like I'm not going to go online and dig up and start trying to learn about things from the old version of the endowment or even I don't even want to bring it up, but like things that are beyond the endowment, because those are sacred. I'm not going to go there. It like literally says you're not really supposed to talk about something that happens later on. And so I don't even like want to bother there. I know that like Alyssa Grenfeld is not afraid to hit on some of these topics, and I purposely avoid those areas because to me that's like a sacred thing. And so it kind of makes it hard when someone's like criticizing, oh, the endowment's changed. And it's like, well, I didn't go through back in the 90s, like my parents did. I can ask them questions in the temple. I can learn about it. But I have like a level for respect of the temple that makes it hard to like just be like, I know exactly what changed because I purposely
super open about it.
Don't want to go looking into those things. You know what I mean? I'm not going to go look at, like I think it was like disrespectful. Like there's a famous interview with Elder Holland back when Mitt Romney was running for president, where they asked him about some of the stuff that Mitt Romney did in the temple. And I think Elder Holland got a little uncomfortable because it's like, why are you asking me this? Like, we don't do that thing anymore. And it's like, yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you get that same feeling? It's like, I'm not going to go through and try and look up like what those were because that's sacred. And so it's kind of hard to like talk about how it has or hasn't changed because I'm not willing to just like, so go ahead.
It was interesting because I actually, a friend, an apartment mate, a roommate that I had right after I came back from my mission, had a professor that had access to the special collection in BYU. And so
the restricted section?
Yeah, like from Harry Potter.
It's I asked to go down there one time.
Collections, I think.
I was like, can I go in there? And they're like, no. But I tried. I tried to go in there. I have to try. So, you know what I said? I said, I'm going to come back with my invisibility cloak. And they're like, okay. So
and the lantern.
If I could borrow an invisibility cloak, I have permission to be in there. So anyway, keep
there
going.
Wasn't any screaming books when you opened them, so it was a little anticlimactic, but we actually went in there and they like brought it out in like the copied paper stuff. And so it was kind of funny. It was like these roommates that I had just met like a couple of weeks ago, just like sitting there reading the 1982 Temple Endowment in the basement of the BYU library. It was kind of interesting.
So wait, you got to be there or just the roommates?
All of the roommates together.
So you were there.
The roommate brought all of his. Yeah, so I was there and I read I read the whole thing. It was 1982 or something like that.
Yeah.
Temple Endowment script.
So did it shake your faith? Has it changed, Luke?
It has changed. Yes, it has changed. I actually don't recall I think the penalties were in there.
Yes, absolutely.
If I remember correctly.
Those didn't leave until the 90s. Maybe even early 2000s.
I'm fuzzy on what date the one that I read was, but old enough that they were in there.
Oh, yeah.
But it was even older than that. Like, there was a preacher dude in there that like tried to talk to Adam and Eve and convince him that he was like a Protestant minister guy almost that Satan was like, here you go, like listen to this guy. And it's like it's like a televangelist almost.
It's the guy mingled with scripture.
Funny, but it's conveying something and it's trying to get across something. It's trying to.
Everyone knows that stuff has changed, but what about
you're talking about the covenants,
the stuff that matters, and what is the stuff that matters? I mean, this is hard to talk about.
It's still a further taking upon yourself of the name of Jesus Christ, with the blessing in return being that of receiving exaltation, not just remission of sins like you get at baptism, but exaltation. And so while some of the specifics in that have changed, what the covenant hasn't. And so there's a sense in which you could say that it's changed, and then there's a sense that you could say that it hasn't changed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, it's even changed since I first went through and to now, And my first time I went through in the Salt Lake Temple with live actors, which was a fun experience. Mm-hmm. And some of those people, old timers, have some of the older stuff that they remember, which is kind of funny. In fact, I know someone who had kind of a weird experience in the temple because when they were going through certain processes, one of the workers began to do what you no longer are supposed to do. and because they're just an older gentleman who just started doing it in the old way. Like, I don't know, they just went back in time. You know, they were in the mood, in the zone, and this kind of freaked out this person and kind of like caused a like beginning of a faith crisis. It's like, oh my gosh, like I thought this was not supposed to change, and like once he started doing this to me, like suddenly I'm like, wait, it changed, and then they kind of went through this rabbit hole and whatnot. So I have my own thoughts on this. I'm just trying to kind of extract from you. You know, I hope you know. I hope you're okay with this. I'm just trying to
there
explore.
is a point where you have to say, look, I think everybody knows the Sister Jones wasn't a theologian, and does it really make the church true that I found tangible proof of that fact? As Sister Jones in this case being the gospel doctor in seminary, you know, whatever teacher it was that you thought was supposed to tell you this thing that didn't tell you it.
Oh yeah,
and
sure.
It's like, did the church ever present this person as like the end all be all? We've produced another prophet in the factory up at church
it's not about the
headquarters, and they're
people,
kind of the
though.
infallible.
It's about the covenant ordinance that's supposed to be restored. So if it restored means it existed, you know, so people think like this is the exact same way that, you know, people in the old days used to go through it, kind of a thing. And so then people get freaked
it's making so many assumptions.
It
and
is. I'm just
go
trying
back
to
I know, but but that's what I'm saying is it's a kind of a case by case basis. And like, why were we assuming? It's that quote again that has come up, that the endowment is made for man and not man for the endowment. And so
have you never heard that this is an eternal thing that was restored?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
think about it.
So what's the eternal part if it all changes?
Well, here's the thing, though.
Okay, yeah.
Even if it stayed, you're having fun pushing back on me a ton. I can see it.
Yeah. Anyway,
even if it stayed exactly the same, so the words were the same, the dress was the same, all the kind of stuff was the same, it would still be an entirely different thing to somebody depending on what context they had it in. I mean, for starters, it would be in like Koine Greek, and you wouldn't even be able to understand it because the words have never changed. That's kind of what the Catholic Church has done. Actually, it's like, no, wait, we're keeping it in Latin. Like, even though the language is Latin anywhere, like it's staying in Latin until they finally made it a lot more English or whatever the native language is.
Right.
So there's that aspect, and when you change languages, it has to change because there's just different connotations you can't get across the same exact thing one language to another.
The wording
and then even
can change.
Something like clothing
can change. Sure, wording, clothing, but there has to be
so
something.
Now we're starting to say that exactly. So now we're getting into this thing where it's not
that is the same. And what is that,
fundamental? Yes, there we go. Fundamental.
Yeah.
And so that goes back to what I said before, was that the endowment was, is, and will remain a ceremony or an ordinance done under priesthood authority, whereby you more fully take upon yourself the name of Jesus Christ, and in return receive promises relating to exaltation and entering into the presence of God as an equal, for lack of a better term. And so,
but do you have to learn about obedience, sacrifice, consecration? Do those have to be part of it?
Have to be. That might be a strong word, but I'd be comfortable saying they are part of it.
Because as far as I know, and from what I kind of painted myself as like not knowing anything about the past endowment. You know, like I said, I have family members who have gone through it, and I just explained that like one family member, someone that I know had a difficulty when things change like that. And so like I have talked to people who have experienced it, but like my point when saying that is I'm not going to go look on it online. I'm not going to like dive deep into because I just don't feel comfortable doing that. But as far as I know, in one form or another, and maybe things weren't as explicitly said that this is law of blank, but those have always been there, as far as I know. Do you know anything to suggest otherwise? Because to me,
I do know that it was like 6 hours long. So there's a good chance a lot of stuff stayed there.
They
Like
hit on
there's only
everything
so
in the
much you can do in 6 hours. So obedience and sacrifice was probably brought up at some point.
Did you hear, by the way, there's this group that's not members of the church who have built, they're doing like the original, as far as they can perform it, endowment in Nauvoo for anyone who wants to go experience it. I wouldn't want to do that because I think that would be sacrilegious. But supposedly there are faithful members of the church who are very interested in like experiencing the original endowment, even though it's not like with the authority. I think they even admit that they don't have like the authority, but also there's like some weird thing though, because like a lot of that was lost and had to be recreated by Brigham Young when they moved to Utah. So I don't know if they're using Brigham Young because like they lost most of it. Anyway, let me just see. Well, I kind of mentioned this earlier. There's a theologian that said something that has kind of stuck with me that I really like. He said that all religious people are seeking the same thing, which is communion with God, a relationship with God. He talked like Ostler, a loving relationship. He's invited us into this relationship. And so to me, like that's what the temple endowment is the covenant relationship. Like I think if you were to like look at maybe some of this temple stuff that was going on in Book of Mormon times, maybe, or just in the past, because we do believe that there's stuff that was restored, it wouldn't really look like how it looks today necessarily, besides the fact that there's a covenant relationship. So to me, I don't think we should be concerned about the changes because the relationship part of the endowment will always be there. Like, I mean, going back to like the Book of Mormon, it doesn't explicitly mention the temple endowment, but there's pieces of it here and there, right? You see washing, anointing, you see the Lord talking to the veil, you see going to holy ground, things like this. Those are all kind of like temple-y things, but I don't think we should expect to find like the temple ceremony in the Book of Mormon because I don't think it looked like the temple ceremony necessarily today. I think the message of the Book of Mormon, at least to me, one of the biggest messages of the Book of Mormon is the importance of a covenant relationship with God. And that's really all the endowment is you are making a covenant with God. And the promise of that covenant, as you mentioned, importantly, is beyond the salvific stuff, but of exaltation. So that's the part that's never going to change. Covenant relationship. And I know like some people might hear that and be like, well, that's lame, blah, blah, blah. But that's how I see it. Like, to me, that is the message that, I would say that the Book of Mormon does contain the fullness of the gospel because it emphasizes covenants throughout. To me, that is like the theme of the covenant relationship with God and getting to know him through that relationship. And so that's all the temple is. Your thoughts?
I think that's it. And it kind of necessity, if it's going to stay the same, it has to change. Which seems kind of counterintuitive, but
if it's going to stay the same, it has to change.
If it's going to stay the same, it has to change. For example,
okay, let's hear.
Nauvoo, and mostly Nauvoo, when they started doing the endowment, like something like washings and anointings. I heard this recently on the Keystone podcast with David Snell. You actually would like wash yourself in the washings and anointings because in that time period you probably hadn't had a bath for a week or more, and we don't know what that's like.
You need to actually bathe, like literally bathe, because you stink.
Cast your mind back to the backpacking trip that you went on with the scouts or scout camp or whatever it was. Like, to not bathe for that long and then to bathe, like that's a big shift. And so that was a thing that they experienced in the temple, that transition from being not bathed for a week to bathed, that had a significance that we couldn't replicate today. And so even if you still, when you arrived at the temple, like there was some sort of room and you like went and actually took a bath as part of the washings and anointings, or at least a more thorough washing, sure, it would be the same, like the same thing would be happening, but just the significance would not be there. as it was for those people. And so, yeah, it stayed the same, but it still changed because what it meant to you, because it's symbolism, symbolism
it still points
is very
to
like
the same
subjective.
thing.
Yeah.
But the
and so
variable name has been changed.
yeah. And part of my point is to say, like, maybe a better way. Maybe a better way to say that is, even if it stays the same, it won't stay the same. I think that's an even better way of saying what I'm saying. Even if it stays the same, it doesn't stay the same, because just the context in which you experience it in changes so much that even if it's the same exact thing that was going on 2,000 years ago, you would receive it in such a different way that effectively you are getting a different endowment than somebody that long ago was getting.
Yeah. I mean, we're not expecting to be digging up, like, you imagine like they're doing some kind of archaeological thing and they find like a statue Moroni. Like, no one's expecting to find that. Yeah. So, like, I mean, the temple is obviously different than what it used to be back in the day. Like, there were no, I assume, statue Moronis on these big, beautiful white modern buildings with elevators and air conditioning, And so, like, little things like that, like, obviously, it's much different, like you said, like the actual bathing process.
I don't think they did work for the dead back then. Like, this seems to be this dispensation.
Well, why
kind of
are
thing
they not? Why are they baptized for the dead in 2 Corinthians 15?
This is true.
Why are they not baptized?
That is.
So there's some
maybe
indication of it.
A since Jesus Christ type of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But
sure
we also
Abraham,
have like the law of Moses stuff prior to Jesus Christ. So that we have like a lot of temple stuff there that is obviously different. Oh, sorry, Corey. It's 1 Corinthians. I said 2 Corinthians. Corinthians. My favorite scripture. Corinthians.
Yeah. Everybody loves it.
A great Trump, Donald Trump, dare I say. I'm not saying it, a lot of people are saying it. Will sound in the four corners of the earth. How about that? Great things will happen. They love me. Anyway. There you go. Trump ended
I don't think I'm going to heaven, but the Mormons, they tell me, they say, Mr. Trump, we're going to baptize you when you're dead, Mr. Trump. Don't worry. And I say, oh, that's great.
Yeah. That's so funny. Yeah. Corinthians. Anyway, real quick though, temple garments have changed. Give me your hot take on that.
I don't care. That's the short.
For some reason, I thought you might care. I don't care either. But some people care.
I don't care in the sense that I'm not mad about it. I do have to clear up a little misconception. There's this idea running around online that like this was just really desperately needed by the people in Africa. Like, oh my gosh, we were going to have a crisis on our hands if the garments in Africa were not 1.5 or less. It's probably less than that, actually. 1 inch shorter than they are now. That it was just going to be a bloodbath. Africans wear like 3/4 sleeve, non-breathable, down to their ankle dresses with big headband things to church. Like, that's just their typical, not everyday wear, but like special occasions. They will get into this non-breathable, down to here, down to the ankles, with this covered in the 95-degree, 89% humidity, and go to church and be fine. Like, the African, sure, it's more convenient in some senses, but the mesh garments were already the salvation there for them. Like, it's basically like see-through. You're almost not even wearing anything. It's just a little more chafing than usual because of the way the fabric is. But it was more convenient for them, but I don't think it was like, oh my gosh, like we have this need. I think it was just, oh, this could be more convenient and there's nothing wrong with it. And so we're going to do the thing that might be a little more convenient.
No, totally.
And maybe I'm not, I'm not an expert on all of Africa, but I was in 2 separate countries for a year each on my mission. Interacting with people wearing garments a lot and myself wearing them. I never was like, man, if these sleeves were like an inch shorter, my life would be greatly improved. That never crossed my mind. And so it is funny seeing people who have never been to Africa online being like, they really needed this. And so it's, if anybody
it's a global church.
Has any concerns about this whatsoever, you're not being sympathetic to the needs of the African saints. It's like, They were fine. It
Well,
was a little more convenient, but they were fine.
I'll say this, which is in line with what you're saying, but kind of on the other side, where a lot of people, or not a lot of people, I've heard some people say that, oh, well, it's a global church. It's a global church. So we have to like adjust things for the global church. Well, it's like, well, we can adjust things that are cultural. Like we wouldn't be like, well, most of the globe isn't Christian, so we're just going to like not believe in Christ anymore. Like, no, that's not going to happen. You know what I mean? So obviously
Yes.
there's some, like, we're not just like bending the knee to this global culture and like, no, modesty suddenly doesn't matter. So we're going to, because the rest of the globe, they don't follow our Western thing. So we're going to just, stop wearing clothes. Like, no. What it is like, there's certain things that can be changed that don't really matter. Like, I know some people have claimed that like, if you show your shoulders, you are walking pornography, and like, I don't know, like, by the way, that kind of sounded like President Oaks, and President Oaks certainly did not say that. And I think people need to watch his whole clip. I think you guys on Word Radio did like show the whole clip and kind of talk about that. Maybe you weren't there for that one.
Yeah, I wasn't on that episode, but I know they did talk about that one. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was so, yeah, like maybe there's some teacher and young men's or something that have said something like that in the past. That's like, causing people to struggle with this idea that now you can suddenly show shoulders and it's okay. But like, I don't know, like this is obviously one of those things that like can change and it's fine, but the church can't just change because of culture. And the church isn't just changing this. The church is changing a cultural thing because of culture. This isn't a doctrinal thing that's being changed because of culture.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all I would want to clarify on that. Like, it's fine to, like, as the church expands, yeah, like there's certain things that we might uncover that are like, this is kind of like a very Utah thing that like doesn't really matter. So let's get rid of it. Or like, we don't need it, but like, we're not going to change doctrine because that's not a Utah thing. That's an eternal thing. Anyway, last thoughts, Luke. By the way, everyone, you can find Luke at Doctrine and Governance with Luke Hansen. Also, check him out on Word Radio. He's a contributor to Word Radio. And are you still the editor-in-chief? Do you guys even do Word Radio news anymore?
I haven't really done that much since having like a baby and moving and all that stuff.
Right.
However, he does have a BYU journalism student, Ella, with a long last name that starts with a K, who's been doing some stuff with him on that.
And she's taken over?
Carden just loves to be doing 8 different things at once when he has the capacity to do 5 different things at once, which is still extremely impressive.
Oh yeah,
Don't get me wrong.
He's
a lot
impressive.
more than a lot of us are doing.
He directs and produces his live streams all at the same time. I try and do that same thing, but I know that Carden is much better at it than I like. And he still sounds coherent. Like the thing is, I feel like because I can get a little distracted, trying to make sure we're doing a good show, I probably sound like an idiot a lot of times. So apologies to people.
You're making your guests look better.
Sure. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. Any last thoughts? Doctrine and Governance with Luke Hansen.
I did record just earlier today, on immigration and the church's policy on it and Trump and all that kind of stuff. So that should be interesting. Coming out pretty shortly.
Get Jim Bennett on your channel, Luke. How can I make this happen? Jim and I are buddies. He talked to you? Do we need to talk about this off the air?
Sure.
All right, let's do that.
After the live stream's over. I will say on the garment thing.
Yeah, let's hear your last thoughts.
The consumerism is a little concerning to me.
People are
not
excited.
Quite raise the alarm bells. All's not well in Zion, but just the amount of attention paid to them, not as symbols of covenants, but as items of clothing that will now allow me to wear other items of clothing that I'm going to buy and I'm going to stay in line. And it just turns into like buying and selling and getting the new thing at the same time that everybody else gets it and posting it before
Do you think the
everybody else
church is
posts it,
doing
and
this
it starts to
because they're making a ton of money on the garments? It's a marketing ploy. They're making so much money. It's trending. They're selling out
for like $2.50 a piece in Africa. Like I think that whatever overhead or whatever markup they're getting in the US is just going off to be
they sell them
a compensation for saints in other areas.
At least when you consider globally, they sell them from what I understand, like at value. So there might be a markup, like you
I'm
said.
not saying
for, like,
that they're expensive. I'm just like that buy the new thing mindset, and like that's what you're motivated by seems to be prevalent in Utah, and I'm not sure if that's a good thing.
Oh, probably more than just Utah.
So,
but yeah, I mean, it is a sacred symbol.
That's where it's concentrated, and so it's a little more visible with the lines and all the posts and stuff
Utah
like that.
Brothers and sisters. You know, if you look at the Salt Lake Tribune, the sisters are ecstatic. And it's funny. So I made like a video about...
they're obsessed with it. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Like Julie Hanks on a recent Mormon Stories podcast, they're like, okay, say something good about President Nelson. And he let more women be in councils and they adjusted the garments. But he had some problematic things too. It's like the only thing you could care about was if, in my worldview of how the world is supposed to be, women climbed the ladder a little bit higher, and everything else he did, like the family and the 10 kids and all that kind of stuff, just like not even on the radar for this woman. It was kind of remarkable to see.
Isn't it
but I cut you
interesting?
off, and I apologize.
Oh, I was just gonna say, isn't it interesting? You know, you have Julie Hanks, who now is just like, I don't know, not afraid to just go on all these like Mormon Stories episodes and whatnot. But what was I saying about the garments before you cut me off, Luke?
I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine. I guess the point is, no, I mean, it can be exciting. It is a sacred thing, you know. Oh, here's what I was going to say. So I actually, before the changes, I mean, they just came out like today, didn't they, in the US? Or somewhat recently? This last week, yesterday? Okay. Mm-hmm. Point is, I made a video on garments on my channel. Everyone should go check it out. And I wanted to, like, I don't know, prepare for some of this stuff, get ahead of it, because it was still kind of new that these were announced even in the hot climates. And I just kind of went through a little bit of the history. The garments used to be like wrist to ankle, and just kind of talked about that and why, like, we shouldn't be, like, they've changed in the past. It's fine that they change now. That's basically the thesis of the video. And the video is my least performing videos of all time on the channel. And I was doing some diagnostics on it to kind of understand why. And my audience is 90% male. And I realized that was a dumb move by me because males don't care about garments. They don't. You don't care about it. I don't care about it.
We only care in the sense that we are surprised at how much other people care.
No, like, I understand why women care, because like their clothes are a lot different. That, like, man's clothes are like the same, like no matter what. It's like if modesty is just about clothes, which I don't think it is, but if it is just about clothes, I think it's easier for men to live than for women, because our clothes, like how do you even dress to be immodest? Like, not wear clothes? Oh, okay, well, like, just put clothes on, you're probably gonna be fine, you know. But obviously, I think modesty goes way beyond clothes.
I don't know. Those like short guy shorts are coming back. It seems like from like the 80s.
Okay, well, let me change the criteria. But wear clothes, but also don't look like a doofus. There you go. Now you should be good. That's the word of the day. Anyway, okay. Any last words, Luke?
Gospel's true.
The book is blue, right?
Yep.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.